Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. Today, we are doing a preview of the Boise State versus UNLV Mountain West Championship game. This is a historic moment because this is probably the most anticipated, I'm not going to say probably, this is definitely the most anticipated Mountain West Championship game of all time. This is the first time that the Mountain West champion, without a shadow of a doubt, will be playing for the college football playoffs. They are going to be the highest ranked group of 5. We'll talk about seeding, where they could end up compared to other Power 4 champions, but they are whoever wins this game is headed to the CFP. Big noon kickoff for Fox is coming down. This game is on Fox. There's a lot of hype around this game, and deservedly so. And so to kind of commemorate that and to definitely take this game the seriousness that it needs to be, I decided let's do a live preview where Ron counts on, a face that should be familiar to a lot of Boise State fans out there. Obviously, longtime reporter for the Idaho Statesman before his move to California. And now he's writing for Hero Sports, doing great stuff. Once we're done with this video, I'll go in and I'll put links to his content, to his Twitter. You can find him at Ron the Scribe on Twitter and find his great content as well. So today, we're going to be going through the implications of this Mountain West Championship game. We'll spend a little bit of time at the beginning talking about what this game means for the CFP as far as seeding for Boise State or UNLV, for the Heisman race as well, just everything that's on the line. And then we're going to go through, as usual, all my game previews. We're going to talk about the series history between Boise State and UNLV. We'll also talk about some series history for Boise State in the Mountain West Championship games of past days. And then we're going to talk about key players for both Boise State and UNLV. And then we're going to talk about keys to the game. Again, for both Boise State and UNLV, I'll present the Boise State keys. And then Ron Counts here will be presenting the UNLV keys to the game. And then we'll summarize and add our score predictions. So whether you're a Boise State fan or a Rebels fan, we've got content in this video for you. And join us in the comment section. We want to hear from you. We want to participate with you throughout this video. We'll be bringing people up live as we go throughout. So let's get right into this then. Ron, thanks so much for coming on. This game is 6 p.m. on Friday. Big noon kickoff coming in. The game itself, again, kicking off at 6. Boise State is a 4.5-point favorite per Vegas. So similar odds to what we saw when they faced UNLV at the Rebel Stadium. But now Boise State is playing at home. Just before we talk about some of the implications, what are your thoughts, just initial thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, it is the best possible matchup to have in the championship game. You know, I really like Colorado State this year. Their offense was up and down. You know, before all the running backs got injured, they had a really solid offense. But outside of Boise State, there is not a more complete team in the Mountain West than UNLV. They've got a dominant offense. Their running game is top 2 or 3 in the league. Their defense is probably the best in the league. They probably have the best special teams in the league. I mean, you can't ask for a better matchup. And you talked about, you know, the implications of this game and how big a game this is. I mean, think about the players. Think about the players in the field. You know, they've been working since January, busting their butts, running decks, you know, doing all this stuff. And for the first time in their careers, it could potentially pay off in a national championship. I mean, how does it get any better? You know, how do you get any more motivated for a game than you are right now? Like, this is huge. It's going to be one of, if not the biggest game in program history. And if this isn't the biggest game in program history, the next one sure as heck will be. So, I mean, it's a great time to be a college football fan. Great time to be a Boise State fan. Great time to be a UNLV fan. It's going to be an exciting game.
Well, you're right on that point. This is probably the game that I think Boise State fans across the board, I think we're probably hoping we didn't get this matchup because of how tough it's going to be. Colorado State would have been a little bit of an easier foe. But when you talk about setting the stage for the CFP, the matchup that's going to bring you the most national attention, this is the game. You should have the CFP poll has not released yet. That'll be coming out on Tuesday. So right now we just had the AP rankings. But just if you look at the teams that lost ahead of both of these programs, you're likely looking at a top 10 Boise State, probably right there at number 10, moving up at least one spot. And then UNLV, that's going to be somewhere between 18 and 20, most likely. So you're looking at a top 10 versus top 20. I think that's the first time that's ever happened in the Mountain West Championship game, as far as I am aware. So this is going to be a great preview. I can't wait to get into it. As you've seen already, we've had some comments popping up. We'll bring those on as we go throughout the show. Before we get any further, though, the score prediction challenge. So for anybody watching live, I want you to throw your score predictions in there. At the end of the video, I'm going to save those, and we'll look at those at the end of the video as well. But for anybody that wants to participate in the score prediction challenge, of course, anybody that gets the score right or is closest to it, I will shout out in my game review. You're going to have to go back in when this video finishes and comment on the replay, because unfortunately the way StreamYard works, I won't be able to see any of these comments afterwards. So anybody watching this live, throw your score predictions in now, but also when we're done, just make sure you go throw them in again. And then anybody else watching on the review, make sure you throw your score predictions in now. All right, so let's just set the stage here for Boise State versus UNLV. We've talked about what a big matchup this is. I didn't know, but ESPN's giving Boise State a 68.6% favorite in this game. But either way, it's going to be a close one, and for good reasons, because both teams are very motivated to play. This is now a play-in game for the playoffs. This is a pre-playoff game. This is the first stage of the playoff game right now. This is the game in Dayton. You know, this is the first stage before you get into the big game. And so right now, Boise State and UNLV are both playing for the playoffs, but Boise State's in a little bit of a different position here, because if you look at the other conference champions right now, we have the SEC with number 7 Georgia versus number 3 Texas, and both those teams will probably shift around a little bit in the rankings. And then the Big Ten with their top 5 teams, those aren't going to move around that much. But the Big 12 champion and the ACC champion, neither of them are guaranteed to be ranked ahead of Boise State when all this is said and done. The Big 12 is going to have an Iowa State team versus a Arizona State team, number 18 Iowa State versus number 16 Arizona State. Both those teams will probably move up a little bit, but not significantly. And then the ACC champion, with a just incredible game from Syracuse, now finds themselves with a Clemson. They'll probably be maybe below UNLV potentially in the rankings, facing a number 9 SMU. And so depending on who wins this game, if Boise State wins and Clemson wins the ACC, Boise State could be at the 3rd or 4th seed in the country coming into the playoffs. What are your thoughts on that? Is this a position you ever thought that a group of 5 team would be sitting in, especially in the first ever playoffs?
Absolutely not, but it is huge. I mean, what a huge momentum, what a huge break that would be if Boise State got that bye. I mean, think about how dangerous Genty is when he's banged up and tired and hurt. But think about it now, then facing a fresh Genty. I mean, I would be terrified in the second round of the playoffs to face a Genty that is healthy, that is fired up, that is ready to go. I think that would be a huge spot. I really think you'd look at that Big 12 game. I think that's going to be a big one to watch there, because you don't know how the committee is going to judge style points. Arizona State facing Iowa State. If Arizona State blows out Iowa State and Boise State barely beats UNLV, Arizona State could sneak above Boise State in that regard. But you're right. Boise State is in a great spot for a top 4 seed. That first round bye would be huge for them. And what a statement that would make. You mentioned it, did I ever think this would happen to a G5 team? No way. But I mean, if it did happen, think about the shrinking divide between Power 5 and G5. I mean, it's shrinking already. It's almost gone at that point if a G5 team gets that bye. So Boise State just has to win. They have to beat UNLV. They need to beat UNLV in convincing fashion to guarantee that spot.
Well, you're right about that shrinking divide. The parity between all levels of college football has really been shown this season. I was arguing before NIL, the transfer portal, that the so-called power divide between Group of 5 and Power 4 or Power 5 wasn't that significant. But especially in the age of NIL and transfer portal, everybody's got athletes. Why would you be a second-string quarterback or running back, even as a 4-star on SEC roster, when you could go be the starter at some Group of 5 school for a year or two and then maybe bring yourself back up? And highlighting that talent across the board is Ashton Genty this season. The best player in college football. I know that he's right up there, of course, with Travis Hunter and what they've done this season, but arguably the best, or one of the best players in all of college football on Boise State's roster. The Heisman campaign for him that the school has been running. So on that Heisman campaign, that's still on the line right now. I know that Vegas has Hunter as a heavy favorite. The last betting odds that I saw, and I looked these up yesterday, so they might have changed slightly, but were -1,000 for Travis Hunter and +750 for Ashton Genty. And those may have increased a little bit there. So Hunter's a heavy favorite right now. However, he's not playing in a conference championship game this year. He is not going to get that final chance to present his case, and that's not a guarantee for him not winning it. LSU's quarterback won it last year, and they were 9-3, didn't play in their conference championship game. So I know there's been a lot of arguments for they didn't make the CFP, they're not going to make the CFP or their conference championship game, so he shouldn't even be eligible. That hasn't been the trend in the past. However, Ashton Genty gets one more chance to present his case. He is 5th right now all time for most yards in a single season. He's just under 400 yards away from breaking that number. Can he still win the Heisman? what would he have to do in this game to win the Heisman with the way the national conversation is right now?
I think he has to do exactly what he's done all season. I mean, nobody's been able to stop this guy. You know, if he comes in and puts up 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns in these next 2 games, I don't know how you could not give him the award. I mean, here's the thing. Travis Hunter, phenomenal athlete, phenomenal player, probably going to be one of the top 2 or 3 guys drafted come April. You know, he's a unique guy. He's a novelty. Not many guys play both ways, but he's not the best at either one of his positions. He's not the best receiver in the country. He's not the best cornerback in the country, not by a long shot. Ashton Jeanty is the best running back in the country. I mean, we'll put it up there. You know, the kid from Iowa, Caleb Downs, he's solid. You know, Ohio State's got 2 really good running backs, but they are not Ashton Jeanty. They're not the guy that breaks more tackles than anyone can count. They're not the guy that's leading the country in yardage. I mean, Ashton Jeanty just has that it factor. It's hard to really accurately describe what it is, but Barry Sanders had it. Reggie Bush had it. LaDainian Tomlinson had it. They're just players that the big play is coming. At any moment, anytime they touch the ball, they can take it 70 yards to the house, 80 yards to the house. That's Ashton Jeanty. He's going to be an amazing pro. He's an amazing athlete, and he deserves the Heisman Trophy. And again, all he has to do is exactly what he's been doing. Break tackles, keep running down dudes' throats. If he comes anywhere near 200 yards in these next 2 games, it's his award, in my opinion.
Well, this is a good question here from Lucas Taylor. Will Jeanty technically break Barry's record, even if it includes the championship and bowl/playoff game? My understanding that it's a season record, so he would. I think there was a qualifier on that. I think Barry did it in the regular season, if I understand that correctly. So I think there would be a qualifier on that, kind of with some of these other records that have been coming down from the COVID season because players have been playing for like 6 years. So technically, I think it would still count. But you're right. I think that he is still in the running. I think that there is a perspective on the national side versus the voter side as well. I don't necessarily believe that just what you see from on social media is going to determine the Heisman. I still believe that it's a close race. And just the fact, just to be able to sit here for a second and say that we have a group of 5 player that is in a head-to-head race for the Heisman Trophy is in itself a massive accomplishment. And Boise State's had guys in the past that came close. Ian Johnson, I think he came in 7th, and then Kellen Moore came in like 5th or 4th or something like that. But Ian Johnson, and also the fact, here's another thing, that regardless of who wins it, it looks like it's not going to be a quarterback. And that's a significant step forward for the Heisman in the first place as well. So there's definitely a lot on the line in this game. We see tons of comments coming in, tons of score predictions. I'm saving all of those. I'll throw those in at the end of the video. So keep those coming in. And again, make sure when the video is over that you go throw those in as well on the saved side of things. But thanks everybody for being here. Again, keep that engagement. We're going to get into previewing this game specifically. A lot on the line. And this is a UNLV versus Boise State series that hasn't necessarily usually had a lot on the line. It's a series that Boise State has dominated quite consistently, 10-3 in the series so far. First ever meeting was in 1972. Boise State won that game 36-16. And then UNLV would get the next 2, 73 and 74, getting their wins in early in the FCS days. The Boise State would win in 75. UNLV would win again in 76. And then Boise State would win for the final time of any chances for UNLV from then on out until current day in 1977. And between 2011 and 2024, Boise State won 7 times. However, I said traditionally there hasn't been a lot on the line in these games. That has not been the case the last 2 times these teams have played. In 2023 Mountain West Championship, this is a rematch of the Mountain West Championship game. Boise State won convincingly. Obviously, Spencer Danielson coming in after everything that had gone on with Andy Avalos being terminated from the program, and the rebound that team had was an incredible season, a really miraculous end to the year there. And Boise State ended up winning that game 44-20. But in 2024, when we played in the regular season, and there was a lot on the line, that at that point was a discussion of whoever wins this game will be in the driver's seat for the playoffs. And that was true. And Boise State narrowly winning that game 29-24. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty taking an injury that's kind of not limited him per se, because he's still doing incredible things, but definitely not playing to 100% since then. But Boise State won that game. Boise State is now going to play for the 3rd time versus UNLV in under a year, with 2 of those matchups being in the Mountain West Championship game. And this is not the first time that Boise State has played a repeat team in the Mountain West Championship game. Obviously, you have all those games with Fresno State. Boise State 4 separate times played Fresno State twice in a season, ended up winning 2 of those, ended up losing 2 of those in the Mountain West Championship game. They also played Hawaii in 2019, winning both of those matchups. And then obviously this is the 8th time Boise State has appeared in the Mountain West Championship game. They're 4 for 7. However, notably, they are only 2 for 4 in Mountain West Championship games when they play a team that they beat in the regular season. Very, very tough to beat the same team twice. What are your thoughts on this repeat here in the Mountain West Championship game and just on the series history so far for Boise State in the Mountain West Championships and versus UNLV?
Yeah, I mean, it really says a lot to where both these programs have come over the last few years. You know, you mentioned it early in the series, the games didn't really have a lot of meaning. They didn't carry a lot of weight. The last couple of meetings have, and that just shows you Boise State has been one of the top, if not the best G5 program in the country, the last decade. UNLV has been steadily growing. The last 2 or 3 years, they've had a lot of success. They've had a lot of growth. So these are 2 programs that are on the rise. And you talk about that game in the regular season. I feel like that game was, in a way, a turning point for Boise State because UNLV was the first defense to really sell out to try and slow down Ashton Jeanty. And they slowed him down. You're right. He had the elbow injury. But they kind of, in a way, laid the blueprint for how to potentially beat Boise State. You look at what teams did after that. San Jose State loaded the box. San Diego State loaded the box. Wyoming loaded the box. I mean, everyone tried to recreate that mold, and they just didn't have the pieces to do it. UNLV has those pieces. You're talking about a wide receiver like Ricky White, who's one of the best in the country as a receiver and leads the country with 4 blocked punts this season. Quarterback Malik Williams is one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the league by far. I mean, he's got a strong arm, accurate arm, really is dangerous in the running game. So he's a guy that can make things happen. And their defense is just full of playmakers. Jackson Woodard is one of, if not the best linebacker in the conference. Jalen Catalon, one of the best DBs in the conference. I think he has 5 or 6 interceptions this year. So UNLV has the pieces. UNLV has the scheme. They just got to put it all together. They can't beat themselves. They can't have turnovers. They can't go for a crazy 60-yard field goal and miss it. They can't have those things where they shoot themselves in the foot. In a game like this, in a game where you're playing one of the best teams in the country, you can't beat yourself. That's the easy way to have a blowout. Turnovers, missed opportunities, no points in the red zone. Those things will cost a team big time at this level. So UNLV's got to come ready to play, and any mistakes are going to cost them big.
Well, that leads us perfectly into discussing the key players of this matchup. You already mentioned some of those. We'll lead off with the Boise State key players, and we'll talk about some of the UNLV guys. In the comment section, let us know who you think are some of those key players. I mean, obviously, Ashton Jeanty, Malik Williams, those are going to be your top guys. But any additional players that you think are going to be major contributors in this matchup. So let's lead off with Boise State. I'll lead off with my 3 key players, and then we can discuss yours as well. I'm assuming that some of these guys are probably going to be the same. So for key player number 1 for me, we've already mentioned him already, Ashton Jeanty. That's been a pretty obvious one there. The offense has run through him. He has 2,288 yards rushing, 7.3 yard average, 28 touchdowns. Notably, he is 1 touchdown away from breaking the Boise State rushing touchdown record, which was set by Jay Ajayi in 2014. And then he has 18 receptions for 102 yards, receiving game not being quite as big a part of his game this year. Teams have definitely keyed in on that. But notably, the lowest performance he had of the entire season was against UNLV, at least where he played 2 halves, 128 yards and a touchdown. He was banged up early in that game. He powered through, but UNLV came up with a great game plan. You bet they're going to try and replicate it again, which is why my key player number 2 is going to be very, very important. My key player number 2 is going to be Cam Camper. I think that Cam Camper is going to be a big playmaker in this matchup. He's been the number 1 receiving target for Boise State, 50 run receptions, 811 yards, 4 touchdowns, long of 53. He did have a couple of drops last week. He made up for them. He caught what should have been an interception, and was able to continue that drive for Boise State. But notably, we talk about lowest performance of the season for Ashton Jeanty. Cam Camper's lowest performance of the season was actually against UNLV as well. He only had 36 yards versus UNLV, which was his lowest of the year. So Boise State, if their offense can't be explosive, they're going to need their defense to play big like they did the first game. I think a lot of that's going to flow through Andrew Simpson. Andrew Simpson was such a key part of this team last year. He was such a key part of that victory last season versus UNLV with the club. Still had the one-handed interception, was such a huge play. But he hasn't necessarily had had the same year. Part of that has been injuries. He's been out for a couple of games. Last season, 66 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 2 interceptions. This year, 38 tackles. We're at the end of the year, only 38 tackles so far. 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 1 interception. Part of that has been that Boise State has been a little bit better with their blitz packages and their defensive line. They've been getting more pressure up front. So you haven't had as many players getting to that second level. So Boise State has played a little bit better up front. JVM has been so huge, stepping up from across from Hassany, and then Gums and Newton, of course, as well, and Callahan. All those guys have played so well in the defensive line. So that's been part of it. But another element has been Andrew Simpson coming off of those injuries. But versus UNLV, he had one of his biggest games of the season, 5 tackles and an interception. So can he repeat in this matchup? Boise State's going to need him to be a big factor. They don't look the same team when he's not having a big game, and they're going to need him to be able to stop Hajj Williams or the running game from UNLV. So those are my 3 key players. I'm sure some of those guys duplicate with yours. What are your guys for this matchup?
Absolutely. Yeah, on the Boise State side, I would really add 2. I would add tight end Matt Lauder. As you said, UNLV is going to load the box. They're going to try and shut down Genty. But one thing UNLV does a really great job of is disguising their coverages. That's why they have so many interceptions this year. So I think Boise State is going to try and get the ball out of Maddox Madsen's hands really quick. We're going to see some bubbles, some screen game, but I think Matt Lauder is going to carry a heavy load today, and he's shown he can do it. He's having a really great season. And defensively for Boise State, I would say Ty Benefield is going to be a big factor in this game because there's a lot of movement at the line of scrimmage in that UNLV offense. They want to get your eyes going. They want to get guys going all over the place. Todd Benefield is going to have to really play center field in this game. He's going to really have to make UNLV pay if they have any mistakes. If Williams throws a bad pass, it's going to have to be Benefield that really makes them pay for that. But then on the UNLV side, let's look at some of those players. So for me, first there is running back Jaden Thomas. They call him Jet for a reason. The kid is super fast. He leads the team with 830 rushing yards, really a strong, shifty runner. He's really a great complement to Hajj Williams, especially in that option game, which is something we'll talk about again later. And then, backing him up, Kylan James is kind of that thunder to the lightning. He's a big 220-pound back, really a straight ahead physical runner. He can run over some guys. So both those guys are going to carry a lot of weight in this game. And then, defensively, we got to talk about Jackson Woodard. That young man, I said maybe, but I'm going to clarify. Jackson Woodard is the best linebacker in the Mountain West this year. He's number 2 in the conference with 114 tackles. He's got 17 tackles for a loss, 4 interceptions. He's just got all the instincts that you need at linebacker. He knows where the offense is going before they even know. He's never surprised. He's never out of position. He's a guy that is going to make a lot of money playing ball on Sundays for sure. So those are my 3 UNLV players to watch.
I agree with those guys, especially when you're talking about Woodard. He was such a big impactor versus Boise State. He had 14 tackles, which is tied for his most in the season. He's actually done that 3 times. That just tells you the incredible player that he is. And he was big in limiting Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty still having over 100 yards, still getting a touchdown, and he was able to beat Woodard one-on-one a couple of times. But he was big in limiting that. And then obviously, like you talk about, Hajj Williams. I mean, my goodness. They lose Sluka, and you think that they're going to go downhill, and they don't. They have turned themselves. They end up being better than they were with Sluka. And he's been such a big role player, both the passing, over 1,500 yards passing, over 600 yards rushing. He's had 4 100-yard rushing games, including the last time that Boise State played them. So let's get into our keys to the game here, because I think finding ways to stop the offensive potential and beat the defensive potential of UNLV are going to be so big in this one when you have probably the best team, one of the best teams that Boise State's played. I mean, obviously, Oregon, number 1 in the country, right? But the Boise State game versus Oregon, it felt, I know we lost that game, but we lost it because of 2 mistakes on our end. Really, we beat that team by 2 touchdowns, if not for, 2 touchdowns given up on special teams. UNLV was, I thought, the hardest challenge for Boise State all season, where that was just line to line all the way through, and Boise State had to pull out a gutsy win. So keys to the game here, I'm going to present the Boise State ones. I'll go through and present my Boise State keys to the game, and then Ron, you can go ahead and present your UNLV keys to the game. Everyone, this is a chance again for you to add your own analysis, either thoughts on our discussion here or your own keys to the game. I'll try to get to those as well as we go throughout. So key number 1 for me is going to be, for Boise State, is going to be Madsen's legs. Obviously, Ashton Genty is going to be the primary player here with his running game abilities, and also obviously the passing game is going to need to be big as well. But Boise State needs to find a way to open up this offense. Versus UNLV last time, they had just over 200 yards passing and under yards rushing, which is below their average. They've been averaging over 190.2 yards per game. That's just Ashton Genty's numbers alone. Boise State's actually been averaging 224.8 yards rushing per game. But UNLV found a way to key in on and stop the traditional running game with Ashton Genty. And I think that Max Madsen's legs are an underutilized part of his game. We've really seen it come on big the last half, really since UNLV. He had over 50 yards rushing in that game. It was the first time this season he'd done that. And we've seen that be such a big role for him. The play action pass is such a big part of this Boise State offense. And we saw last week, what I really liked against Oregon State is that when the play action pass wasn't open, Madsen would run. And he was effective on it almost every single time, picking up 8 and 9 yards at every time that he used his legs. He's not going to be your Taylor Green. He's not going to break out an 80-plus yard touchdown run where he jukes multiple defenders, but he is sneaky fast, and he has that agility to be, and also that just blue-collar work ethic to power through a guy who's on him and be able to push into the end zone. And we saw that last week, end of the game versus Oregon State. The option play is covered, 3 defenders on him. He jukes 2 of them out and powers through a third to get into the end zone. He's just that hard-nosed kind of player. So I think that utilizing Madsen's legs more is going to be a key part. Boise State needs to pull out all the stops on this offense. Something I've been kind of talking about the previous preview videos, getting the screen ball involved, getting the deep pass involved, getting the short, quick passing game. But getting Madsen's legs involved more, I think, is going to be essential. Getting the option run and giving opportunities for the defense to have to consider multiple looks here. Take some pressure off an offensive line that's been banged up. Get some opportunities for Ashton Genty on the outside where you can get the pitch going or keep it and run it for a few up the middle. So I think that key number 1 is getting Madsen's legs involved more in the offense. Key number 2 here for me is going to be ball security. And it hasn't been a huge problem for Boise State this season. They have 6 turnovers overall, 3 interceptions, and 3 lost fumbles. However, 4 out of those 6 fumbles or turnovers have come in the last 4 games for Boise State. So they have been pretty good all year, but it's definitely increasing. They've had 3 fumbles and an interception in the last 4 games, including 2 of those coming from Ashton Genty, who's been so good with his ball control. But after taking that pop on the elbow, it's just that he hasn't had quite as much stability in that left arm as when it comes to running and being able to protect the football. And so for Boise State, they need to protect the ball versus UNLV. UNLV is one of the best turnover teams in the country. They have 16 interceptions on the year. We mentioned Woodard; he's had 4 picks, and then their secondary has been really good at forcing those turnovers. They have 3 forced fumbles, and they're going to be playing very aggressive. I mean, obviously, it's not like they're playing with nothing to lose here. They have a chance at the CFP, but this is UNLV. This is UNLV that, previous to the last 3 seasons had been a non-factor in college football for 30 plus years. This is their Cinderella story. They're the lower team coming into this with a chip on their shoulder. Nobody expects them to win this game, and they're going to be coming out aggressive. They're going to be playing those high risk, high reward. And if Boise State's not careful, whether that's running the ball, throwing the ball, or on special teams, on special teams alone, they've had multiple fumbles that just ended up going out of bounds. They were able to jump back on. They've luckily only lost 1 fumble there on special teams, but they have had some issues there covering up the ball and being able to protect it on those big run backs on the kick return. So for Boise State, I think when you're talking about a game of inches, a game of momentum swings, a team coming to play you at your home stadium with that chip on their shoulder, you give them any momentum, any small bit, that is going to be exponential, and it's going to drastically change how this game ends up playing out. So Boise State's got to protect the football in this game. And then key number 3 for me, and this is actually a repeat from the last time we played UNLV. I brought it back because I think it's important. Is special teams. You already heard me mention it already with some of the fumbles on Boise State's already had, but they have to avoid what I like to call the Oregon moment, obviously. And last time they played UNLV, they did well. 25-yard kick return long, 9.7-yard average on the punt return, so that wasn't great. Long of 17, but no long breakaways. But UNLV has the capability to do that. I mean, they've got DeJesus out there, who is voted as one of the top guys in the Mountain West coming into the season on return. They've got some other dangerous weapons on return game as well. Boise State special teams has been kind of the consistent struggle all year. I think you could add the secondary in there as well. But Boise's never really figured out the special teams. In fact, at a press conference a couple of weeks ago, this was kind of shocking that the coaches just admitted this, but they said, we can't kick it out the back of the end zone. We want to. That's our goal. Every single play is to kick it out the back of the end zone, and we just aren't able to do that. They have done that a little bit better the last couple of weeks, but one of those was at Wyoming, the elevation. That always helps. And then last week, San Jose State, that I did see some improvements there. But Boise State special teams has been a concern all season when it comes to their coverage. When it comes to, they said sometimes they're just kicking the ball to the wrong side of the field, and now the coverage is out of position. When it comes to the return game, they've actually gotten better at their average returns when it comes to their kick return. They're about the same average for punt returns from last season. But then the ball security thing has popped up. They have these incredible young athletes like Bates, like Dylan Riley, that are really exciting talents, and I think they're going to be huge role players for Boise State going forward. But they're also young guys moving up from the high school level, and it is shown a little bit in just the ball security on some of these long kick returns, punt returns, trying to do a little bit too much. So Boise State in the return game, they just got to play it safe. Kick that ball at the back of the end zone and allow your offense to be the big playmaker. If you can get a good return, do so, but don't do it at the risk of your ball security. Going back to that key number 2. And then just to wrap up here for the special teams, I think that's going to be a huge factor because Boise State's got 2 of the best specialists in the country, and James Ferguson Reynolds and Jonah Dalmes. The running game, the first 4 games, it wasn't quite what we expected out of James Ferguson Reynolds, who's only averaging 42.3 yards per punt. However, coming back from the injury, he has exploded on the back half of the season. He's averaged over 46.5 yards per punt in the last 6 games, including back-to-back in the last 2 plus 60-yard punts. I think that he is going to be a huge playmaker in shifting the field position in this one. And then Jonah Dalmes, he was coming this season looking to take the record as the best kicker in the country as far as made field goals. I'm actually not sure he's going to get there now because he only needed 18, but he's currently only got 13 kicks. Boise State just hasn't kicked very much this season. So that has impacted in a couple of ways. You look at the record, whatever, but it's made him rusty. He past 3 seasons, he's had over 20 kicks and made field goals per year. But so far with the limited action, he's gotten a little bit rusty out there. Coming into last week in the previous 5 games, he was 1 for 3 in field goals. He'd had 3 games where he hadn't kicked a field goal at all. And then he had back-to-back games where he missed a field goal. So last week versus Oregon State, I know a lot of fans were upset about Boise State not being able to convert and finish in the red zone. I was as well. But I think the fact that Boise State had an opportunity to get Jonah Dalmes' leg warmed up is going to play such a significant role in this game and in the playoff game. The fact that Jonah Dalmes was able to kick a left hash 40-plus yard field goal that he'd missed the previous week and make it. The fact that he was able to kick a short field goal as well, kind of get both of those looks, settle himself down. The only way that you're going to beat the yips is by actually getting out there in real game action and getting a chance to perform, and he did that. And so I think that special teams is going to be a huge key for Boise State. So to wrap up for my keys of the game before we hear the UNLV ones, is Madsen's legs, ball security, and special teams. Ron, go with your keys of the game for UNLV.
Yeah, first of all, I love what you said about special teams because I think special teams is going to be huge in this game. You got 2 units there that are going in opposite directions. You got UNLV's special teams that has been one of the best in the country this year. You mentioned De Jesus is a great returner. They're one of the best teams in the country when it comes to blocking kicks. And then Boise State, surprisingly, has really struggled in special teams this year. We really thought they were on the upswing there. You mentioned Jonah Dalmes and JFR and all the great returners, but it just hasn't shown up there. But I think it's going to be big this week, and I really think there's going to be a lot of field goals in this game. Both defenses are going to really tighten down in the red zone. I really think this game is going to come down to a big kick. So Jonah Dalmes is going to have his work cut out for him this weekend, I think. But let's start with my UNLV keys to the game here. Number 1, control the clock. There hasn't been very many ways to stop Ashton Jeanty, but one way to stop him is keep him on the sideline. Wyoming really kind of showed the blueprint for that a couple weeks ago. Wyoming won the time of possession battle in that game 34-04 to 25-56, and they held Jeanty to 19 carries. And I'll say this, anytime you're going to hold Ashton Jeanty to less than 20 carries, you got a chance to win the game. And Wyoming was right into the end, so I just think UNLV's got to find a way to win on third down, first of all. They've got to keep the offense on the field, and that might mean not taking as many big shots. That might mean taking a page out of Air Force's book and 3 yards in a cloud of dust, a lot of short passes. Whatever they got to do, they've got to get their time of possession into that 35 to 40-minute range in this game. That really gives them their best chance to win. And I think their best way to do that is to lean on that option game. You look at the regular season matchup, anytime they got Hajj Malik Williams on the edge in that speed option game, he was unstoppable. If they lean on that in this game, I think that's going to be the equation to really keep Ashton Jeanty on the sideline and keep yourself in the game late. Number 2 for UNLV is finish drives with touchdowns, not field goals. You mentioned it. They're the underdog in this game. They're the scrappy little team that's trying to earn prominence or earn, national prestige. They cannot make mistakes, and they cannot win on field goals. Last game, they made 6 trips to the red zone, only scored 2 touchdowns in those 6 games. They cannot settle for 3. They got to get 7. That's how they're going to win this game. That's how they're going to stay within striking distance of Boise State for 4 quarters. And then number 3, you talked about Madsen's legs. I think you're right there. I think that's huge. But the way to negate that is for UNLV to be ultra aggressive on defense. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to load the box. But you can't just load the box and expect to stop Ashton Genty. You got to get penetration. So they've got to call blitzes. They've got to mix up their blitzes. You can't just rely on pressure from the 4 down linemen. They got to bring those linebackers. They got to bring some safeties. They got to be aggressive. They got to pressure Madsen. They got to be in the backfield. That's going to lead to turnovers. That's going to throw plays off. So I really think that's their best key on defense. So control the clock, trust the running game, pressure the quarterbacks, finish drives with touchdowns, not field goals.
I definitely agree on that key, especially it was keys to the game, especially the last one talking about pressure on Maddox Madsen. He's been great all season when it comes to avoiding sacks, but those numbers have definitely been picking up. He only has 9 sacks on the season, but over half of those have come in the last third of the season here. He only had 2 sacks or something like that coming into UNLV. He's had 7+ since the UNLV game. And so teams have definitely started to key in on that and start to bring more pressure. And that's been a big factor in why he's the starter for Boise State is his ball awareness, being able to get that out quickly, avoid those negative yardage type situations. But if UNLV can flip the script on that and come after him and start getting Boise State in those obvious passing down situations where they haven't necessarily excelled this season or taking away the threat of Ashton Genty, that is going to be huge for this game. So let's summarize here towards the end. Again, thanks everybody for your engagement so far throughout. It's been a great preview here. I want to continue those engagements as well. I will be throwing up everyone's score predictions here at the end. So we're going to get through to the end here, just summarizing our final thoughts on this game and what these two teams are looking at, any additional comments that we have, and then we'll throw out our score prediction. So again, if you haven't thrown your score prediction in yet, make sure you do so. We'll throw that at the end. And then obviously, like I've said a couple of times, make sure you put that in the replay of this video afterwards so that it counts for the score prediction challenge. All right, so just finishing up here, kind of summarizing for Boise State versus UNLV. We've talked about those keys to the game. We've talked about those key players. We've talked about everything that hangs on this matchup. And it is definitely, I think, the toughest matchup of the season for Boise State. When they went and played Oregon, they had nothing to lose in that game. Where if you got beat but won every other game, you were going to be exactly where you are today. The fact that you came and had a chance to win, where actually the better team, was a shock, but they didn't have to do that. They could have lost that game by 20 points, and they likely would still be in a pretty similar position to where they are today. And so they were playing loose. They were playing free. You definitely sensed that throughout the game. Boise State versus UNLV, that was a tough game. That was a tough game. And in the regular season, having to go up and play at their home stadium as well. But I think that coming to that game, you had some expectations that you were going to be able to go out there and win that game. In this matchup, though, with everything that hangs on it, the pressure, and especially considering the last few games for Boise State, where they have not looked like the team from the first half of the season, where they've stubbed their toe. 2 out of those 3 games coming into Oregon State were won by a possession, and San Jose State was almost a 1-possession victory, if not for a ton of scoring in the fourth quarter, which included a pick 6, a disastrous trick play by San Jose State that Boise State was able to then to turn into a touchdown a few plays later. That game almost came down to a possession as well. And I mean, I know it was like a 21-point win, but it was almost a 1-possession type of game. That game was close all the way to the fourth. Boise State definitely got back on track last week with their game versus Oregon State. We saw them win in a somewhat convincing manner. It definitely felt like they were in control throughout that whole game. They got some injured players back. Simpson coming back was huge. It looks like they'll probably have some guys back as well. I know last week you had Mason Randolph was warming up for Boise State. He didn't end up playing, but he was warming up, so he may be coming back. I know that the coach has talked about Sire Gaines being a possibility to come back here towards the end of the season. But maybe Alexander Tubner will be able to come back. So Boise State's going to be probably one of the healthiest they have been all season coming into this Mountain West Championship game. They obviously have a lot of momentum. They seem to have fixed some of the deficiencies that we saw in that rough patch for them. The secondary played really well last week versus Oregon State. You didn't see any deep balls allowed. Special teams was still a little bit of an issue, but Boise State's defense played better. Genty looked fresher than he has all year, looked very, very healthy in that game. The offensive line, besides a couple of key penalties, was playing well. So Boise State is kind of on an upward trend right now. They have a lot of momentum behind them. They're playing at home, which is so huge. But at the same time, it's a UNLV team that's hungry. It's a UNLV team that's going to be ready. And it is so, so tough, as we've seen from Boise State's past, to beat the same team twice in one season. They know all the tricks. You've used all your plays. They have all the tape on you, plus everything that they experience as well. And they're hungrier than they were the first time. Before we end, don't throw out your score prediction yet, but before we do, what are your final thoughts on this matchup between Boise State and UNLV?
Yeah, I think you talked about those tough games against Wyoming, San Jose State, even Hawaii. I think those games are going to be a blessing coming into this one because Boise State hasn't just cruised by everybody else. They haven't just leaned on Ashton Jeanty to win every game. They've had to find other ways to win. Other guys have had to step up. We've seen Camper, Latrell Caples has had amazing games. Lauders had some really great games. These guys have had to step up and win. The defense had to step up and win a couple games, So, and all that is learning experiences, and all that's going to pay off this weekend because this is going to be a tough game. I would be shocked if this is a blowout either way. I mean, I think Boise State UNLV on Friday is going to be a one-possession game all the way through. It's going to be a tough, grinding, nail-biter, and they're going to have to lean on those lessons to win this game. So, I think those games are going to pay off right now. And really, I think this is a chance right here for Ashton Jeanty to put his stamp on the Heisman. I know it's all, all up in the air right now. It's a two-man race, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty. But if Ashton Jeanty goes out there and puts up 250 yards and 4 touchdowns in the game on national TV in a conference championship game, how do you not give him the award? So I think it's a huge chance for him. But even bigger than that, this is a huge chance for Boise State. Boise State has been on the cusp of national prominence, national dominance for so long. And if you ask their fans, they've been a nationally dominant program for so long. But this is their chance to prove it. This is their Fiesta Bowl. This is their moment to get out there and say, hey, we are one of the big dogs. We are one of these big dog, big blue blood franchises. We belong in the same conversation as these other guys, and here's how we can prove it. We're going to beat you guys. We're going to play for a national title. This is a huge moment in Boise State history. They've got to clutch this moment. They can't let it slip through their fingers.
I 100% agree. This is a massive game. It's a best versus best type of situation here. You mentioned UNLV being one of the best defenses in the Mountain West. 104.2 yards allowed rushing per game for them. Their passing numbers aren't terrible. It's 244.2, definitely a little bit more vulnerable there, but really good at stopping the run, which is Boise State's strength. On the other hand, Boise State is also actually statistically quite good at stopping the run, 106.6 yards allowed per game. I think we've seen some vulnerabilities there, and they'll need to be good versus UNLV. But against the pass, they've been very bad, 258.3 yards allowed per pass. But then when you can look at the offenses, UNLV doesn't necessarily have an offense that exploits the passing game. They're very much of a rush heavy, 245.3 yards rushing per game. They're actually just underneath Boise State, who's averaging 253.5 yards rushing per game. And then passing wise for UNLV, it's 181 yards passing per game versus Boise State, 224.8 yards passing in the game. So when you look at these two teams, statistically, they're running completely different offenses, but statistically, they actually match up quite well defensively and offensively. And I think it is going to be a matchup of best versus best. It's going to come down, I think, to which team comes into this one the healthiest. I think that'll be a big factor for Boise State. Can they get those key injuries back? And then just which team is able to establish themselves early. We had a comment earlier on, I'm not sure if I threw it up or not, but just Boise State needs to score early on. Which team is able to establish themselves early? So
just one last thing, sorry to cut you off there, but I mean, again, I would watch that option game for UNLV. If you go back and watch that regular season matchup, every time Hodge Malik Williams got on the edge in that option game, they could not stop him. So I really think if I'm UNLV, if I'm Brennan Marion, I take the first half of this game and I say, you know what? I'm Air Force this week. I'm running triple option down your throat until you can stop it, because that is a tough offense to stop, a tough offense to prepare for. And remember, Boise State didn't play Air Force this year. Boise State hasn't faced an option team this year. True. So they probably haven't worked on that in practice very much. So I just think if you go back on that regular season game, that's what really hurt Boise State. And I think they're going to lean on that this week. So keep an eye on that this weekend.
I 100% agree with that. Boise State, that's traditionally been their Achilles heel, is stopping the option game. Haven't really had to face that this season. So can Boise State step up? They have done well against running quarterbacks overall, but we'll have to see the offense that UNLV trots out on this field for Boise State. It is going to be a very tough game either way. However, when you look at the advantages that Boise State has roster wise, when you look at what they're playing for, they have been playing for all season long. And the biggest factor overall for me is the fact that they're playing at home. This is a Boise State team playing at home on the blue in front of what should be the highest attended, I think, Mountain West Championship game in conference history, but certainly in school history. We're headed towards a sellout. We're like 5,000 tickets or something away from a sellout on the blue for the Mountain West Championship game. For me, with all the momentum that Boise State has, with the trend that we have seen, like you said, those tough games that they've had to find a way to win in untraditional form, I think that you are going to see a Boise State team that comes out, establishes themselves early in this game, and comes away with a nice, convincing win. I am predicting, for my score prediction, a Boise State 41 to UNLV 27. Boise State 41, UNLV 27. So before we hear before we get to everybody else's score predictions, I'll throw your guys' score predictions up here right towards the end. But Ron, what is your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, and just to clarify what I said a minute ago, I don't expect UNLV to come out this week and run a true triple option. They're already kind of like a pistol option offense. I think they're gonna lean on that. But given what you said, this game has all the pieces to be a super exciting game. It has all the pieces to be one that comes down to the wire. You got amazing players on both sides. You got two really good defenses. You got two really good, really, really, really good offenses, especially in the backfield. I think this game is going to come down to who makes the least mistakes and who controls that time, the time of possession. I really think it is. And in my opinion, it's funny they used 41-27. I think Boise State wins 30-27, and I think they win on a walk. I think they win on a walk-off field goal by Jonah Dalamas. I think this is one for the ages. I think this comes down to one of the best games we've seen all season.
Wow, I know Boise State fans with our history there when it comes to walk-off field goals. That would definitely be some redemption, I think, for the Oregon game, and definitely for past years as well from teams from the lesser state of Nevada. But this is going to be a very, very interesting matchup. Score predictions here from Bronco Nation. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I'm going to throw some of you guys up here as well. Some of these guys are pretty, I think most everybody's pretty similar to your prediction here. I think most people are expecting a pretty close game, 28-21 here, 35-24. 21-20, a touchdown here by Lucas. We got a UCF fan watching. It's great. He actually watches the comments quite a few of my videos. Thanks so much for watching, UC Fez. 28-21. This one is a 3-point score prediction as well. We've got Nathan here, 33-25. Surf City Bill, one of the most loyal listeners of the show. He's actually right on track with you as well, 34-31. Another field goal win, 41-38. 35-25, a couple more to get through here, 27-23. So, a couple more here. Sorry. This one's a little bit more in line with what I'm predicting, 52-21, 40-35. We got 38-24. So not everybody's predicting close. Here's my thought as we look through a couple more of these predictions. I think that a close game favors
nobody's going to take UNLV. Nobody's going to take UNLV.
It's a Boise State.
Somebody get out there and take UNLV.
It's a Boise State show, man. You know how it is. But here's my thought on this. And thanks, everybody, for participating and for all of your score predictions. That one thing I will say here, I think a close game favors UNLV. I think that if UNLV is able to stick around that late in the game, in front of the home crowd that's going to be getting restless, it's going to be getting nervous, and the nerves are building. I mean, Boise State has already been playing every single game like it's a do or die type of game. The pressure has been on them. And now you're actually playing a really, really good team with that additional pressure. Coach Sanford said it really great. In one of the conversations I had is that this team is playing like there's so much care on this team. They care so much about each other. So it's not so much the pressure of the moment, but it's the pressure of not letting your teammate down. And I think when you have a game like that that could potentially be close down to a field goal, that type of matchup, I think, does favor the underdog because they are saying we're still in this thing. I mean, look at Georgia Tech versus Georgia. I know Georgia barely pulled that one out, but if Georgia Tech had gone up and established themselves by 3 or 4 touchdowns early, that would never have been a game that Georgia Tech would have come back in. But the fact that Georgia Tech hung around and stayed close, if UNLV is still in this game, pushing into the fourth quarter, the momentum is going to favor UNLV. So I'm predicting a big win in this because what I see from Boise State is I think that they're going to come out and fight UNLV hard the first couple of drives. But what Chenander has done so far this season. What he's done so well is adjust. The adjustments he's made on defense. Offensively for Boise State, I don't think we've seen the full Boise State offense in its entirety all season. I think that we've seen a lot of attempts to establish specific styles. I think we see a more explosive, more creative offense from Dirk Cutter here in the Mountain West Championship game. And add to that the fact that Ashton Jeanty, he knows what he's playing for. He knows the Heisman's on the line. He also knows this is the team that banged him up last time. And he also knows that he didn't have the performance he wanted to versus them. And I think you're going to see the angriest Ashton Jeanty you've seen all season long. And so for me, that's why I'm predicting the big win. I could definitely see this coming down to the wire, though. If we end up going 30-27 with a walk-off field goal, I'm going to need to have some 911 on standby, and I think the rest of Bronco Nation will as well. But thank you, everybody, for participating throughout, for being we do have one. I'll throw out one more score prediction here. We got one guy predicted.
Yeah, there's one.
So
there's one.
One UNLV fan in the comments. But thanks, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. Make sure you follow Ron's content from Hero Sports. Doing a great job with them and his Twitter as well. Again, I'll throw links to all of that stuff up. You can see down below on the banner where you guys can find that information. So thanks so much for everybody for being here. Before we finish off, Ron, any final thoughts? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I just think, what a great year, what a huge game this is, and what a huge opportunity. It's just such an awesome time to be a college football fan, such an awesome time to be a Boise State fan. Go Broncos, go Rebels. Let's have a great game Friday.
Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you put your score predictions in during the live section, make sure you put them in on the replay. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And as always, go Big Blue!